I've had those experiences. I was doing well, and then I had to sort of reset to zero and then pick myself back up again.
Just trying other things, and now I'm getting back into it, and I think finally I'm here to stay. A lot of lessons under my belt.
At one point, I remember talking to you, like, I'm pulling in $10K a month, but then you stopped.
My baseline monthly expenses were like $5,000 a month as an 18-year-old kid, spending like 1 to 1.5 to 2.5K a week on inventory. So I ended up going into debt for that and a whole bunch of other things.
You can't let fear of failure prevent you from taking risks, because that's where the money is, and that's where all the learning is as well.
I think as a new flipper, it's just trial and error. I've learned so much from couches, and really, if you do your job, it's hard to lose money on a couch.
What are the investments you do plan on making? Welcome to another edition of the Couch Pod. Today I'm joined by Couchman Dan, and interestingly enough, he was one of Ivy Flip's very first customers when we started back in November 2022. He's been on a bit of a hiatus away from the couch game, but now he's back and he's creating content. You can find him on YouTube, and he's here to share his story with us today. So Couchman Dan, thank you so much for coming on the pod, and maybe you could give the audience a brief introduction to yourself.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited. So my name is Daniel. On YouTube, you can find me at Couchman Dan. I've been kind of flipping couches on and off for the last 4 years or so. I started back in high school. I did it for a while, and then I took a break, and then I got back into it about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and then I ran into some pitfalls and kind of was trying other things, and now I'm getting back into it, and I think finally I'm here to stay. A lot of lessons under my belt. So
you were one of our first customers, and your feedback was instrumental in helping us develop the early version of the product. And in some ways, with the proliferation of sourcing softwares similar to ours, and how the game has changed in other ways, you had an influential role in part of that. How do you think the couch flipping game has changed in just the past year and a half?
In the past year and a half, definitely there's more people finding out about it, trying it. There's more competition, and definitely a lot more scammers on Facebook Marketplace. That's a pain in the butt, something that I've noticed more recently. But honestly, I don't think couch flipping is ever going to get oversaturated or whatever, because there's always going to be people that are moving, always people that are getting rid of their couches cheaply, always people that don't want to get a U-Haul. And so even if there's 10 flippers in your city or whatever, if you have a couch that somebody wants and you're willing to deliver it, people are going to buy your couch. So I see a lot of complaints in these Facebook groups, oh, the market's slow, whatever. And there are slow times and there are fast times, but I think people just like to complain instead of taking personal accountability and doing the best that they can.
This is what I've noticed about the people who are still doing well couch flipping, or that have successful couch flipping businesses. They're not spending a lot of time talking about how business is going. They're heads down, they're working hard. And of course, I do think there is a difference just in 2024 compared to 2023. So I'm not saying that things aren't tougher, but it's the search of a solution that gets people ahead and through these times, compared to, moping about and saying like the market is the cause of all the issues. And, I think what's going to happen is people are going to get out of the game because of the difficulty. And then the people that persevere and kind of stick with it are the ones that are going to merge out ahead of the crowd and really come onto an opportunity for themselves. So it's not to downplay the issues that exist. Certainly are issues. I think, especially what we're seeing statistically, just in terms of the number of scammers that are out there, is definitely an issue on Facebook Marketplace right now. But there is light at the end of the tunnel too. And, realistically, if Facebook Marketplace doesn't do something about depressed views or scammers, that demand for buying and selling goods locally is just going to shift to other marketplaces. And, there are competitors to Facebook Marketplace that are waiting for that day to happen. So I think, it's just a lesson to kind of stick with it and stay disciplined and continue to, focus on the right things to grow your business.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, flippers, are you still managing your reselling business the old-fashioned way? In today's fast-paced market, leveraging technology isn't just an advantage, it's a game changer. That's why we created Ivy Flip, the ultimate app designed to supercharge your reselling business. With Ivy Flip, you can effortlessly source products from Facebook, OfferUp, and Craigslist, all from one easy-to-use platform. Say goodbye to missed opportunities and hello to instant notifications when great deals are posted. Our cross-posting feature lets you list your items on multiple marketplaces with a single click, maximizing your exposure and sales potential. Plus, our AI-powered scam detection ensures you spend your time on genuine listings, not fake ones. Don't let outdated methods hold you back. Embrace the power of technology with Ivy Flip and put your reselling business ahead of the competition. Click the link in the description and get a 1-week free trial of our app now.
A lot of the people, they want it to come easy. In the past, it kind of has been easy, but with more competition, with more problems arising, you have to be adaptable. You have to move with the market. You have to be able to change your ways. And if something stops being easy, you have to get creative and figure out ways. I see dudes building their brands, running ads, stuff like that anyone can do. Like Google isn't going away in order to sell their couches, in order to source couches. I don't think couch flipping is gonna stop working at any point.
Absolutely. Now, you've been a flipper for a long time, 4 years plus at this point. And when you're an Ivy Flip customer, you were doing quite well for yourself at one point. I remember talking to you, like, I'm pulling in 10K a month. And for someone at your age, that's quite a bit of money, right? But then you stopped and you moved on to other things. So maybe you could tell the audience a little bit about what happened there.
I started flipping back in high school. I just started it with a buddy. We saw one of the YouTube videos. I think it was Ryan Pineda's. It was the other guy. But we saw this YouTube video and we were like, let's try this. And looking back on that, we had like some trash couches. We ended up taking like 5 couches to the dump by the end of it. Like they were kind of garbage, but I kind of learned the game a little bit, and that was like sophomore, junior year in high school. And then when I graduated high school, I got back into couch flipping, this time with a bigger brain. My brain was more developed. I had more knowledge. I had more resources at my disposal. And so I started flipping couches probably November 2022 or September, one of those months. And I started doing really well because now I knew what couches to pick, what couches would have the most profit. Once I started making more money, I could invest more money into actually growing the business. I got Ivy Flip and it let me find a lot of couches in less time. I had a virtual assistant like scrolling through my listings, like setting up appointments for me, everything like that. And I started to scale the business pretty quickly. I think my best month ever, I did around $12,000 in profit, which was really good for an 18-year-old kid. But what happened was they don't really teach you cash flow management in high school, how to manage your emotions based on finances or anything that's useful, really. So once I started making this kind of money, I kind of got over ambitious. My idea for what the business could be, what my lifestyle could be, kind of started to take over, and I started spending money on things that I shouldn't have necessarily been spending money on. And so what happened in probably June of 2023, it started to catch up to me. My warehouse rent was $1,000 a month. My apartment was like $2,000 a month with all the bills. I had like memberships to this and that, and my baseline monthly expenses were like $5,000 a month as an 18-year-old kid. So just that alone was kind of like draining me. Plus I was spending like 1 to 1.5 to 2.5K a week on inventory, depending on the week, trying to get my numbers up. And then it was one point in June when I just bought a bunch of inventory. So I only had like $3,000 left. I had just already paid all my bills too. And then I had this idea like, dude, I should buy this truck so that I can pull like a big enclosed trailer and I could pick up like 6 couches at once. Because by this time, my virtual assistant was just booking like couch after couch. He would just scroll through my Ivy Flip email and just find couches, message people, whatever. And so I was just picking up couch after couch on Mondays, and I had a schedule. So Mondays, Tuesdays, I would pick up. Wednesday, I would clean. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I sell. Sunday is off, and then repeats the cycle. And I would pick up like 1 couch or 2 couches at a time, drive back to my thing, and then go drive out and drive back. So I was like, dude, if I could get like a big ass like enclosed trailer, I could pick up a shit ton of couches. So I bought this truck and I only had a couple grand at the time. I had the wise idea that I definitely needed this truck. And so I borrowed money from my dad to get it, and I got this truck, and then I signed the papers. I did everything. This truck was mine. And at the end of the day, I only had like $400 left to my name. So I get the truck and I'm driving home, and on my way home, like right after buying the truck, it breaks down on the highway. long story short, this truck was a total lemon. I ended up losing like $4,000 on the truck. I still owed my dad money. And the worst part was my expenses were so high that I didn't have enough cash in order to pay all my bills. And so that kind of ended up in a downward spiral. I had to break my lease in my apartment downtown. Pretty much I had to stop flipping couches because I couldn't afford it anymore. That was kind of the end of my Couch King reign. That's what I call myself, the Couch King in Orlando. That kind of ended it for me because I just couldn't afford doing the business. And so the last year for me pretty much has just been trying to recover from that, because I don't know if you know this, Charles, but breaking an apartment lease in an expensive apartment is very expensive. It was like $7,000 to break the apartment lease, which I didn't have. So I ended up going into debt for that and a whole bunch of other things. And then, I don't know, I could have probably just gotten a job, waited a couple months, and then started flipping couches again. But I was kind of desperate for money at that time. And I had a buddy that was doing solar sales and he was making good money. So I started selling solar door to door. And the thing with that, I made a couple sales, but you have to wait like months and months before you get paid, which I did not know at the time. And then the money that they said they were going to pay me, it always ended up being less. And so my debt kept accumulating, and the money I thought I was going to make ended up not being as much. It's just been a crazy last year trying to recover from that.
How are things now? Are you more in a financially stable place?
Yeah, so now I've just been working, paying off my debt. Now I'm at a place where I finally am working toward the positive. So I decided to start flipping couches again now that I have some kind of breathing room that I haven't had in a while.
Absolutely. No, that's a super tough situation. And, if you didn't run into those cash flow issues, I can imagine where the Couch King empire would be today, with the couch flipping. Even though I think there's definitely bad in the story that you told me, there's also some silver lining, to go through that experience, running your own business, feeling on top of the world, and then having it all crumble down around you. That's way easier to manage when you're 18 than if you were to do it like at my age, for example. I'm 32 now. I've had those experiences where I was doing well and then I had to sort of reset to zero and then pick myself back up again. I mean, certainly not something that I would ever want to do again. You want to, they say on the road to the success are failures, right? But you kind of want to minimize the number of failures,
right.
Because at a certain point, maybe you just don't become successful, right? Because you failed too much. So it's really, really important when these things happen to you to learn from those experiences. And it sounds like you've learned an important lesson.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely been a painful experience having to go through all of these unwanted challenges. But like you said, I'm glad that I went through it when I was 18, 19 years old, because if I was 40 years old and I had a wife and kids and I left my job to do this and all this stuff, and then I made these mistakes, I probably would have not wanted to try again. I would have just kind of given up on my hopes and dreams. But because I'm 18 years old, or I'm 20, I just turned 20, but because I was 18 years old and 19 years old at the time, I didn't really have anything to lose anyways. I just went back to mom's house, got myself back on my feet, and then I got a cheap apartment after that. It wasn't as bad as it could have been because of my age, but I think I did learn a lot of lessons that are going to help me this time. Like I said, in high school, they don't teach cash flow management. They don't teach you how to do this stuff. And so if you fail, then you get to learn. It's like a classroom. You get to learn from your failures. And so now going into it, I've learned the hard way that you need to live below your means, that you need to weather the storm, you need to save money. Don't scale so quickly. If you have a plan, make sure you can afford it, make sure you have backup funds and things of that nature.
What do you think are the most important lessons that you learned?
Number one is just live as cheaply as possible and try to, even in the business, the less you spend, the more you keep. And so this time going around, I got a storage unit, a 10 by 25 for a great deal, $134 a month. And honestly, I can easily make $5 to $6K a month out of that. And my rent right now in this room is $500 a month. I don't really have many other expenses. When I'm going to buy a truck soon, I'm going to buy a $3,000 truck. I'm not going to try to scale this big business, because with more overhead, with more cash flow, with more inventory, it's more work. And so I remember when I was living downtown, there was so much going on in my head at all times. I couldn't even sleep. I would go to bed like my mind still racing about freaking what my VA is doing right now. Like, is he gonna whatever, all these couches I have to pick up tomorrow, all this stuff. And I literally couldn't sleep. And so I kind of learned that the more simple you can keep your life, the cheaper that you can live, the richer that you feel. I don't feel as desperate to chase this kind of lifestyle because I know the headache that comes with that now.
It's funny, like, hearing you say these things out loud, it makes me reflect back to some of my own experiences. The sensation of being wide awake in bed, mind racing, because there's just so much weighing on me. And, one approach that I've developed as an entrepreneur during these days, I guess not my later career yet, but is just to be able to compartmentalize a little bit better and come into each day with a plan. I find that the days I'm the least productive is when I wake up and I'm not sure what I'm going to do. But if I come into each day and I know, like, here's what needs to get done, I put it in a list and I even set aside the time which I'm going to be doing these things. Like, I just have a lot more clarity. And then I also try to distance myself from the outcomes. It's good to be outcome oriented. So instead of like saying, I'm going to make 100 calls, it's better if you make a sale a day than to just make 100 calls. You should be focused on like achieving the outcome. But if you don't make that sale, but you did the 100 calls, you have to let yourself sleep at night, because just the added stress and anxiety is not going to help your performance. People don't realize this. Like, I've been building companies now for a long time, and oftentimes I'll talk to clients or friends who want to get into entrepreneurship for themselves, and they ask me, how do you get started? Like, what is my first step? And as someone that has bootstrapped every step of the way up until Ivy Flip, where we raised some money, it's been very difficult, right? It's like I didn't have guaranteed salary or money coming in through the door at all the times. It was like whatever I could kill, I could eat, or whatever cash flow the business was generating, I could pay myself out of that. Some days were better than others, but there are definitely a lot of times where I'm not sure how I'm going to pay my bills. Luckily, I don't have to worry about that in this moment anymore. And I think most people getting into entrepreneurship aren't going to have the luck of being to pay themselves that well or being able to raise money. They're very likely going to have to bootstrap. So my advice for anyone trying to get into entrepreneurship is always get yourself safe first. And what I mean by that is, if you don't have a year or 2 years worth of liquidity where you can live and pay all your expenses and maybe even deal with like an emergency here or there, you're not in a financial position where you can really give it your all at entrepreneurship. Because if you're worried about like how you're going to get your next meal or how you're going to pay rent, your cortisol levels are extremely high. You're very stressed, and stress directly impacts all areas of performance. It's going to impact your sleep. It's going to impact your thinking ability, probably even impact your physical ability. And as an entrepreneur, to be successful, you really need to be on your A game. So figure out a way to get yourself safe first. If you don't have liquidity built up, then maybe work a job and build up some liquidity, have some savings. Or instead of quitting your job and going full time into the thing that you're doing, make your thing a side hustle, do it in the hours before and after work, and then make sure that you have some cash flow coming or, health insurance benefits coming from the employment that you do have. Build your thing on the side and be confident that you have enough cash flow coming in from your side hustle before you leap into it and make it your full-time thing. These are just examples. Primary thing when you're bootstrapping a business, which is, and bootstrapping for those who are unaware, it's when you take the cash flow coming in from the proceeds of your business, sales that you're generating from the business, and then reinvesting a portion of those profits in order to fuel the growth of your business. So it's like iterative with the money that you're making, that you're building the business, as opposed to, for example, getting a lump sum of cash or injecting a lump sum of cash into the business, like your own cash, and getting it off the ground that way. And I think bootstrapping tends to build healthier businesses as well. It's actually one of the mistakes that we made at Ivy, is that we raised a decent chunk of money to build our company off the ground. And granted, we were trying to build a very capital intensive kind of company at first, not, what we're doing today, but we're actually trying to build a financial technology company. And, we were just so unsustainable with our spending on the onset. And there are a lot of valuable lessons there, a lot of wasted money, a lot of wasted opportunities that you would think that me and my co-founder, in our 30s, serial entrepreneurs, that we may have been able to avoid. We could have avoided. We had to learn those mistakes the very same way that you had to learn at 18 years old. So, I think you've learned an important lesson at 18, but I wouldn't take for granted that this is the last lesson that you're going to learn either. So, keep your head on a swivel. And I think you're going to do a lot better this time, though. I think even just as we're chatting, I can sense a new aura of maturity that maybe I didn't see from Daniel last year.
I appreciate it, man. I think what you're talking about with security is super important, because if I had that, if my expenses weren't so high and I just had some cash piled up, when I ran out of money, I wouldn't have had to make all these drastic changes and go into debt and all of these things. I could have been able to weather the storm a little bit better and kind of push through and then just keep going and learn from my mistakes then, rather than having to start over an entire year later. The cool thing about couch flipping, like right now, I'm working at freaking Chipotle making $15 an hour. And the cool thing about couch flipping, when you're first starting, you can just start off with $500 that you saved from the last 2 paychecks, get a storage unit, get a couch, rent a U-Haul or a U-Haul trailer, and you can literally start from pretty much nothing. And I don't have to quit my job. Like, my bills are secure. I don't have to worry about, oh, am I going to be able to pay my bills, because that just adds unnecessary pressure. So now I can kind of work my way up, and even I think easily I could be making $5 to $6K a month from that single storage unit without having to quit my job, because people work jobs too. So if you just coordinate with them when you're free, it's going to work out.
Yeah, that's a great point. Amazing point. Underrated point, really. There's a sweet spot with couch flipping when you first get started, where your expenses are extremely low and you're making a good deal of money, probably more than what you're making from your full-time employment if you're doing something like, working at a fast food place or a fast casual place. And it's like, at that level, your risk is extremely low. I know people who kind of keep to the scale of, flipping a couple couches a week, 5-10 couches a week maybe. And we have gone deep into their finances together, and their net operating margin is something like 90%. And so that means like literally 90% of the money that they're making is just pure profit. And why? It's like, okay, they had a car, it's paid off. Maybe they got a trailer and they got like a hitch for the car. So they didn't buy a truck, they're just using a trailer. Or they had storage, like they had like a space in their garage or something like that. Or maybe there's like a storage unit that they can acquire for cheap. And really the only money that they're putting in is just like on inventory, maybe some marginal stuff for cleaning. And their business is extremely efficient. They're just banking up liquidity. In contrast, I've looked at some P&Ls for couch flipping businesses where they're making 20, 25 grand a month revenue, but their profits are the same as the guy who's only doing 8K a month. And so they've added all this complexity into their business. They have employees, they have this huge warehouse space, their bills are extremely high, and the overall outcome is very similar to the guy who's just, side hustling. Now, there are pros and cons to both, and there are certainly people that have scaled up their operation that have also managed to keep their operating expenses and their cost of goods lower, and their businesses are more profitable. But it is an important lesson, right? Like, unless you have a very clear vision and strategy for how you're going to scale, there are some times where it's better and more preferable and easier to keep your couch flipping business at this sort of manageable level. And I think, in fact, like the businesses that do scale well sort of operate from these first principles of like, I need to maximize cash flow and I need to maximize profitability. And if I'm going to make any investments to grow my business, that I'm doing so carefully.
Yeah, for sure. I helped this family that I know. 2 of my close friends, they're professional wakeboarders, and so they're traveling a lot. They're my age, but they can't really get jobs because it's like they'll be here for a month and then they're gone for a month doing contests, and then they're back for 2 weeks, then they're gone for 2 weeks. And so I helped them start flipping couches, and all they did was they used their back room in their garage to store couches. So they spend $0 on sourcing couches. They spent $700 to get trailer, and they already had their cars with the hitches. Like you were saying, their monthly operating costs minus like $1,000 for a trailer and some cleaning products is close to nothing. So they've been able to make an extra $2,000, $3,000 a month to fund their traveling, because that's what it's for. That's why they flip couches, to fund their traveling. And they only work a couple hours a week, if that. Like, sometimes they'll go a week without flipping any couches, and it works out for them. And so now that I'm kind of starting over, I like their way of doing it because they've been able to keep like $2,000 to $3,000 a month because they're not spending anything. And so I think there's a cool opportunity for like a hybrid kind of business model where I don't need this giant warehouse with employees, but I also don't have to stop at like $2,000 a month, where there's kind of a sweet spot, like you were saying, where I can work 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week, make an extra $5,000 a month, keep all of that cash pretty much, only spend on inventory, you get that back, but only spend on like gas and stuff like that. And then with that extra cash that I'm saving while I'm making money from my job, like all that cash is getting saved, then I can go invest in new couches or return pallet or something of that nature.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do want to play devil's advocate a little bit and just give the other side here too. It's not that I discourage people from scaling up their couch flipping business. I think generally people should scale up their couch flipping business, but you have to be careful about the way you do it. And the reason I think you should scale up your couch flipping business is because I think we're in this unique moment in time. An industry is developing. So I went to the Couch Conference at the end of last year, and in the room were, say, 60, 70 people across the United States and Canada who are couch flippers, and they're building their businesses independently of one another, but in synchronicity because they're sharing this knowledge, information about what's working for them. That's really what this podcast is about too, right? Is I'm having a lot of private conversations with people, some of whom are very successful. You know, they're making $250,000, $500,000, all the way up to $1 million a year in revenue. And I'm having these private conversations, and, you know, one strategy is working for this guy out in Hawaii, and another guy is doing something else out in Chicago. And now they can sort of like cross-pollinate and share ideas about how to become more successful. And what's happening is these businesses are growing independently, but synchronously as well. And so this industry is growing and developing. And I think it solves a big problem, which is if you're in an apartment and you're moving out, you have furniture you don't want it to bring with you, what do? Well, do you take it to the dump? Do you have a truck to be able to do that? Do you pay a junk removal company? You can't even donate it, right? Because if you try to donate it to a nonprofit, they're still going to charge you a haul away fee. So it's really not a good way for people to get rid of furniture that they don't want. And at the same time, a lot of this furniture has value. And the next person that's moving into that apartment, or, you know, people that are moving into apartment, they also need to furnish their apartment. A lot of the stuff that gets shipped to you in a box nowadays is just cheap crap, made of plywood or whatever. And instead you could get a really quality piece of furniture if it was just like available. And couch flippers, furniture flippers are sort of uniquely positioned within the local supply chain to help reclaim this value in this furniture that's just being discarded and being put into a landfill. So it's a combination of the development of this industry and the fact that couch flippers solve such a big problem that I think that there is an opportunity right now in 2024 in every metro area. If you have like 100,000 people in your town, like there is an opportunity to build a couch flipping business. And if you sort of set the foundation for yourself today and you become that guy in your city or one of those guys in your city, you can carve out a nice little business for yourself. Now is the time, because in 5-10 years, the opportunity is going to be different. And, even in the past year, we can see how that opportunity has changed, right? It's becoming more competitive, and, Facebook Marketplace isn't quite what it used to be. And there's more scammers, etc. So if that's happened in the past year, you can only imagine what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years. So I think the people that are really entrenching themselves and building that brand for themselves are the ones that are going to have longevity. It's going to be easier for them to be more resilient in their market, to be less affected by the changes and ebbs and flows of things. Change of Facebook Marketplace, increase in competition, decrease in supply. A lot of those problems can be solved with scale. So I do encourage people to try and scale their business if they see themselves like wanting to do this long term. It's like now's the time to invest and really dig in. But to learn from your example, right, you got to do it the right way. And I think the number one problem that I heard from you as you're retelling your story is the lifestyle creep. You're spending $2,000 on rent alone. You're doing $10,000 revenue in your business. There is an error in some basic financial budgeting there, right? And it's harder for an entrepreneur. It's much, much harder for an entrepreneur.
Lifestyle creep within the business. I wanted to run this super badass couch flipping business with this brand and have all this cool stuff. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, if you're making $10,000 a month, you easily could have been pocketing $6,000, $7,000, let's say $5,000, $6,000, saving that liquidity, and you just have money, right? Like if you start making investments in your business with $50,000 in the bank, very, very different than making investments in your business with $400 in the bank. And I think that's what sunk you. While we're on this topic, topic, I do want to dig into how I think flippers should be separating their finances. First, I think flippers should incorporate. They should have an LLC because you're actually dealing in a pretty high risk business. You're moving heavy things around. You're in and out of people's homes. You're on the road. You're driving. And if you create a corporation and you separate your finances correctly, this will protect you from being personally liable from things that happen in the business. That's the number one reason to create an LLC is the separation of risk, right? If something goes wrong in the business, people can't come after your personal assets. Secondarily, if you create an LLC, now you can prove income because, you're going to be filing taxes for your LLC. Downside is you're paying taxes. A lot of people don't want to pay taxes, but if you ever want to leverage what you're doing in your business into something greater, like if you wanted to get debt to improve your business, if you wanted to find investors for your business, you're going to need to prove cash flow. You're going to have all these things documented. Or let's say even outside the business, you wanted to take the money that you've been making and invest it into something else, like buying a house or buying rental properties. Very common path for, I think, couch flippers. The bank is not going to give you a mortgage if you can't prove where the money's coming from. So creating a legal entity and then doing the taxes appropriately for that legal entity opens doors for you in the future. And so let's say the business is making $10,000 a month. Figure out what your expenses are. First, it's like your cost of goods, like how much are you paying for product and what have you. And then what are your operating expenses? And I would consider what you pay yourself to be part of those operating expenses. And I would try to structure it so that you're paying yourself a set salary each month, as opposed to any excess money that you're making in the business, you take as an owner's draw and you're just paying yourself everything. Figure out how much money you need to live each month and then pay yourself that as a salary. Keep the rest of the money in the business. Let that liquidity grow in the business and then use that to make investments in the business. Personal finance is a whole other shebang, right? So let's say you're paying yourself $5,000 every month out of the business. Do basic budgeting with that $5,000. Like 30% goes to your rent, 30% goes to necessities, maybe you're saving 10%, and then 20% you can have fun with, something like that. There are budgeting apps out there. I'm not going to get into a whole lesson about budgeting, not the focus of this. Oh, and finally, save money for taxes. Save 30% of profits. Well, actually, it should be 30% of gross revenue to pay taxes, and that'll end up being lower, right? Because you have deductions in the business, but you want to be prepared when tax season does come around. And, that's probably something you didn't deal with because it sounds like you financially bottomed out. But if you wanted to, no offense, but it's the reality. So it sounds like you sort of bottomed out there. But, this time around, if you were to think about doing things the right way, and they didn't teach you this in school, so I'm taking the time to just kind of give you the foundation to think about it a little bit differently as you go about it this time. But I think you have a lot of potential, Daniel. I wouldn't be surprised if we're here in another year, your 6 to 8K side hustle is a 15K to 20K profit business in the next year, because you have that ambition and you certainly have the ability, and the markets are still good.
Yeah, now that I'm kind of at a fresh start, I've been documenting everything on YouTube. I'm going to just document my whole journey. I'm 4 days in, and so every day I'm just going to make a reel. This is day whatever of trying to make $10,000 a month from scratch in a couch flipping business. I just want to document that process so other people can see how it's done, see some of the struggles that happens, because I remember watching Ryan Pineda's videos, pretty much every couch flipping video, Dante, all these videos that kind of document the process, and I always loved that. So if I could kind of help do that for other people with every single day, every single issue that happened, I think it would be a really cool journey. And then with that, I want to start some sort of community to help other people get started couch flipping and create a place where people can come together and help each other like we have in the Facebook groups and stuff like that.
And I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story and being vulnerable with us. Oftentimes on the pod, we talk to people who are at the top of their game and they've been doing really well for themselves. Look, that's not the reality for most people in the US and not the reality for most couch flippers. It's like 10-20% of people are doing really well and most people are doing okay, but then you also have people that are going through very tough times. Maybe they've injured themselves or they had some unexpected expenses, and the more we can have conversations like this, we can normalize the fact that life is not all sunshine and rainbows all the time. And I think what you're doing in documenting your journey, rebuilding yourself and rebuilding your business is extremely powerful, and it's going to be relatable material for other people that are maybe just getting off the ground right now. And I've gone through something similar. They take inspiration more in your story than the guy that's already, zipped ahead and is making $75,000 a month or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I love, like watching Mission Side Hustle. He pretty much did the same thing, documenting it from $0 and working his way up. I really enjoyed that because it kind of gives you hope, dude. This guy literally did it from $0, the same amount of money that they might have, and he was able to turn it into what it is now. And so I think couch flipping has the same opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was actually just talking to him. Really great guy, really smart, has a different level of ambition for his business as well. He's doing less used couches nowadays, more flipping new couches just for the convenience of having the inventory. So he's kind of leveled up his game in that dimension as well. But he's got plans like way outside of couch flipping too. So I'm just waiting to follow up with him over the next couple of days. So now that you're on day 4, what are some of your immediate plans and things that you're doing differently to try and be more successful?
So my first day, like every time I've started flipping couches, I've started with minimal investment. So far I'm down 700 total, and that's with a $400 couch. I have 3 couches now. That's with U-Haul. That's with my storage unit. And so this $400 couch, I really think that spending more money on better couches is so much better, because I bought a $60 couch and a free couch, and the $60 couch, it's like a nice sectional, but it's got a bunch of like bullshit on it. It's from a kid's place, so it's got like freaking Legos in the cushions and all this, and I'm just gonna sell it as is because I don't really want to deal with that. But the couch I paid $400 for, it's like a $3,000 electric recliner, sectional, and everything like that. So I'll be able to sell that for $900 and make $500 by pretty much just picking it up and dropping it off. I'm not gonna do any like massive cleaning to that. So I think if you're willing to invest more in better inventory, then you can make your life a lot easier. I remember when I started last year, I'd spend days on one couch because it was in poor condition, and I'm just not messing with that anymore, because if you don't do a 10 out of 10 job, then this person you sell it to is going to be like, dude, this couch smells like ass and I want a refund or whatever. Can you send me money back? And I don't think it's worth it. So I think higher quality inventory, and like we've been talking about, just managing your cash flow, keeping expenses low.
How important do you think it is to select the right inventory, and what are the kinds of pieces that you're on the lookout for now?
Some of the green flags I look for is some shade between black and white. If it's black, white, gray, anything like that, navy blue, that's really all I'm going for right now. Sectionals, that's all I'm really going for. Clean, no pets, no smoking, because your inventory is your business. And so if you spend more time getting the right inventory, it's going to make your life a lot easier.
Are there any brand names that you like to work with, types of material?
Not necessarily. There's some certain couches that from Ashley's Furniture or Costco that I've had 8 or 9 times, and whenever I see that, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting that. I think as a new flipper, it's just trial and error. I've learned so much from couches, and really, if you do your job, it's hard to lose money on a couch. I've sold couches for as much as I've paid for them, or taken like a $50 loss, but it's hard to like lose money on a couch. I would say don't be afraid to try shit. I've spent $500 on I forget the brand, but it was like this turquoise, like mid-century modern couch, and it was like a $3,000 couch, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna be able to sell this for like $1,500, like it's gonna be crazy. And I sold it for like $800 and I made $300. So I don't know if it was worth it to have my capital tied up for that long, but I learned a lesson. Maybe don't spend $500 on a couch like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we kind of know as a community what like popular couches are, and it's better to deal in popular couches. But if you don't try things, you're never going to learn. And so I tell people, first, really focus on turnover rate. Like if you get a couch and it's priced too high and it's just sitting there, start dropping the price and get that thing out of there. Like it's better to keep inventory moving in and out, because especially if you have high cost of storage, let's say you have a storage unit costs you $1,000 a month, you can put 10 sectionals in there. One sectional in that storage means that you've paid $100 just to store that couch, right? Just doing some basic math. I'm not saying this is a real scenario. Turnover rate, really important. Move things quickly. And then the other reason you should move things quickly is that now you have more experience moving couches. Every time you move a couch, you learn something. So for example, you gave the example of Costco, Ashley. It's like, that's a no-brainer for you now. But there are also other no-brainers that you're just not aware of at the moment because you haven't had the experience dealing with those couches, or maybe they're not in like great supply. Taking calculated risks here and there, and like not being afraid to pick up a couch. If you think there's an opportunity to make money, go try it out. You know, worst case, you sell the couch for what it cost, or maybe you take a bit of a loss on that couch. And of course, you want to try to minimize those mistakes, as we've been talking about. You don't want to make a career out of making mistakes, but you can't let fear of failure prevent you from taking risks, because that's where the money is, and that's where all the learning is as well. And then what about your setup? You got your trailer. Do you think you're going to end up buying another one, or what are the investments you do plan on making?
So I don't have a trailer right now. Right now I'm driving my dad's car because he's living in Colombia. So I'm just using his car right now, and I'm renting a U-Haul trailer. It's actually pretty cheap. I spent $15 for an entire day with like a 4x something trailer, but that's pretty much nothing for a trailer for an entire day. So that's just what I've been doing, and it's worked out. Now my dad does want his car back at some point, so what I'm saving up for right now is a truck. I'm gonna get a Ford Ranger. I'm just gonna use that thing till it drops. I don't think I need a trailer to flip couches. I've seen people put 3 sectionals on their Ford Ranger, and I've loaded up enough couches on trailers. I've put like 4 sectionals on a trailer, so I know how to stack my couches and strap them down right. But really, I think I'm gonna try to take a more minimal approach this time around. I'm gonna work my job. I'm gonna save money. I'm gonna have my little truck, and once I have enough cash, then I'm just gonna start buying new couches and flipping those, because I can store those in a 10x25, my $100 a month storage unit. Previously, with like return pallets, you'd have to have a warehouse and a forklift and stuff, but I've figured something out with a supplier. So that's kind of my path to progression. I know everyone's is going to probably be different. Not everyone has access to the people I do or whatnot. That's just kind of what I want to do going forward. I already lived that busy couch flipping business lifestyle, and I want to take a different approach this time.
No, I mean, super cool. And I'm excited to follow along with your journey. Like I feel the wisdom, man. In some ways, I'm really proud of what you've done over the past year. How you've like picked yourself up, you've rebuilt yourself, but you're right back into the game. And I think it's going to make a big difference for you. So I'm excited to follow along with your journey this time around. I'll be sure to keep my eye out for your content. And then, of course, we'll have links in the description for the video below for anyone that wants to follow along with you as well. But I appreciate you taking the time chatting with me today and sharing your story with our audience.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate you having me on. Quick shout out to Ivy Flip, the best couch flipping software out there. It's a game changer.
Amazing. And I'm going to get you set up with our cross-listing tool as well, too, because right now with the depression in Facebook, a lot of our sellers are having a lot of success selling on OfferUp, and our cross-listing tool makes it much, much easier for them, because the key with OfferUp is you have to relist almost every day, in that your views drop off after the first day or two, and there's no easy way to relist things on OfferUp. You have to go through your phone and manually create each listing each time, but with our cross-listing tool, you can just simply copy, paste, and then the listing is up again. So I'm going to show you that right after this.
Sounds good, man.